Dinosaurs are still an absolute banger of a topic. Whether it's their gigantic size or their mind-boggling diversity, these ancient reptiles never cease to fascinate us. But when we think of dinosaurs, we tend to imagine fully grown adults. But before they were huge, they were tiny, like really, really small. Hi, it's me, and welcome to Tiny Titans, where we explore the early lives of baby dinosaurs. In today's episode, we look at one of the smallest groups of dinosaurs, the Compsognathids. The earliest known member of this group was the species Compsognathus. Its fossils have been found in Europe and Asia, and it lived during the late Jurassic period around 145 million years ago. Compsognathus means beautiful jaw in Greek, and it's derived from the angular shape of its skull. It was a tiny dinosaur with a body length of 2.5 meters and weighed about 7 kilos, so about the size of a Boston Terrier. It had a relatively large head and narrow pointed snout, small eyes, and long powerful legs that enabled it to run fast. Its tail was long and whip-like, which would have helped it balance while running. Its arms were also quite long for a theropod. It's believed that Compsognathids, like other theropods, walked on their tippy toes, and their long arms would have helped them grasp prey or maintain balance. Their long necks would have also aided in keeping their center of gravity over their feet, enabling them to stay upright. The discovery of Compsognathus in 1862 by German paleontologist Hermann von Meyer was actually significant because it challenged the prevailing view at the time that dinosaurs were all huge and clumsy. It provided early evidence that dinosaurs could be small and agile as well, helping to broaden our understanding of their diversity. However, despite being discovered first, very few Compsognathus fossils have been found. This is likely because they lived in a time period when most of the world was underwater, making fossilization less likely. The lack of fossil evidence makes it difficult to know much about the behavior and ecology of Compsognathids. But we can learn a lot from their close relatives. In fact, there was another famous Compsognathid that was even smaller, named Uncle. With a name like that, how can you not love it? Like Compsognathus, Ankylosaurus was also a biped and carnivorous, but it was much smaller. At just over 1 meter long, it weighed only 2 kilograms, and it's possible that some individuals didn't even reach sexual maturity. If that's the case, this dino probably died before it grew up, which would explain why so few fossils have been found. Its extremely fragile bones suggest that it may have been more active than its larger relatives, possibly leaping through the trees in search of prey. We don't have any evidence that Ankylosaurus was arboreal, but given its size and build, it seems likely that it spent at least some of its time in the trees. Its forelimbs were longer than those of Compsognathus, but shorter than those of other theropods, and its hands had 2 fingers instead of 3, which could have helped it grip branches while climbing. However, its hind limbs were shorter than its relatives, suggesting that it wasn't built for jumping. All in all, it looks like Ankylosaurus was a kind of mini raptor that hunted in the trees. And speaking of little raptors, remember the scene in Jurassic Park where a baby velociraptor hatches from its egg and then promptly tries to kill the unsuspecting paleontologist? Well, it turns out that this scene was actually based on real life. See, all birds are technically dinosaurs, and birds exhibit parental care, that is, taking care of their offspring after they hatch. Many birds will regurgitate food for their babies, guard their nests, and defend their young against predators. And in some cases, like that of the black-crowned night heron, they'll even carry their babies in their mouths. Now, it's no secret that birds evolved from dinosaurs, but until recently, it was thought that this parental care behavior also evolved separately in birds and other dinosaurs like the Oviraptorosaurs. But a recent study published in the journal PNAS suggests that this behavior may have originated in a common ancestor shared by all theropod dinosaurs, including birds. What makes this study particularly interesting is that the fossil evidence was actually discovered back in 2001 in Guangzhou, China. The fossil was a preserved Oviraptorosaur sitting on a clutch of eggs, But it wasn't until a decade later that researchers realized that it wasn't just any Oviraptorosaur. Instead, it was a completely new species, one that exhibited features that suggested it was closely related to the ancestors of modern birds. And finally, what makes this find so relevant today is that the age of the eggs was determined to be between 24 and 26 days old, meaning that the animal was literally caught in the act of caring for her children. This suggests that this behavior may have been more widespread among theropods than previously thought. So if theropods were already practicing this behavior, maybe our Jurassic Park paleontologist wouldn't have been so surprised by his little friend's murderous tendencies. Now, while it might seem like these little dinos are pretty similar, they actually represent a whole variety of different types of theropods, which helps us understand the incredible diversity of dinosaurs. Another great example of this is the troodontid dinosaurs. These dinosaurs were medium-sized, bipedal carnivores with relatively large brains. They had long snouts, small heads, and huge eyes. In fact, they had the largest eyes of any terrestrial animal that we know of. Troodontids have been found in North America, Asia, and Europe, and they lived during the Cretaceous period, which was from around 145 to 66 million years ago. The oldest member of the group is Boreopelta Micheli, which lived around 100 million years ago. The name Mitchelltii comes from the famous American paleontologist Elie Mitchell, and the species is called Micheli in honor of the technician Mark Mitchell, who spent almost 700 hours carefully cleaning and removing rock from the fossil. He basically became the namesake of both the genus and species. Now, it's important to point out that troodontids were not the same thing as troodonts. Troodonts are a separate group of dinosaurs that lived in the same period and area. You might be thinking, what's the difference? Well, to answer that question, let's go back to basics. Both troodonts and troodontids were part of the larger theropod group, but troodonts belong to the family Troodontidae, whereas troodontids were in the family Troodontidae. Okay, now that we got that cleared up, let's talk about Troodon. Troodon means pullet in Greek, referring to the bird-like nature of the dinosaur. It was around 2 meters long and weighed about 300 kilograms. It had a long neck, short tail, large head, and powerful jaws filled with serrated teeth. Its arms were relatively long for a theropod, which may have been useful for hunting in dense vegetation. However, the most remarkable feature of Troodon was its eyes. They were huge and set far apart, which gave it excellent binocular vision. This is an adaptation that's also seen in birds of prey, which use their keen eyesight to spot prey from great distances. Troodon was likely an ambush predator that used its eyesight to stalk and then pounce on its prey. Its favorite food source was probably small ornithopods, which were herbivorous dinosaurs that lived alongside Troodon. So troodontids and troodonts both lived during the same time period and in the same place, and both were carnivorous. So obviously they would compete with each other for food. But they also faced competition from other theropods, such as Daspletosaurus, a relative of Tyrannosaurus rex. Because of this competition, troodonts and troodontids likely needed to be highly adaptable in order to survive. They probably had to be willing to scavenge if necessary, and they needed to be able to hunt a wide variety of prey. Despite being closely related, troodontids and troodonts differed in a number of ways, which shows that they occupied different ecological niches. For example, troodonts tended to be larger than troodontids, and they also had larger skulls and teeth. This suggests that they were more specialized for hunting large prey, whereas troodontids were better suited to catching smaller prey. Troodonts also had longer hind limbs and shorter forelimbs, which would have made them faster runners. In contrast, troodontids had shorter hind limbs and longer forelimbs, which would have made them more maneuverable in dense vegetation. So while they were closely related, they had different lifestyles. So it turns out that there was a whole bunch of little dinos running around during the late Cretaceous. And these guys weren't just small versions of the big meat eaters we've heard of, but represented a variety of different types of theropods. From the small and agile Ankylosaurus to the intelligent and watchful Troodon, these dinosaurs showed just how diverse and adaptable theropods were. And who knows, maybe they even hunted those pesky Compsognathids. Thanks for coming along on this journey into the lives of baby dinosaurs. If you liked learning about these tiny titans, make sure to subscribe for more episodes. We've got plenty more where that came from. And if you want to learn more about dinosaurs, check out the Dino series and book series. And if you want to learn more about dinosaurs beyond the big, scary meat eaters and plant-munching giants, then you need to check out my book series, Tiny Titans. It's available wherever books are sold. And thanks for coming along on this journey to the past. See you next time.